Hello, class. This is Professor V. Time for some midterm exam review. Hope everyone's happy, healthy, safe, and sound. What we'll do is I'll go through everything that you need to know to study for the test, and it'll obviously be review, but hopefully it'll help, and by the end you'll be ready to go and ready to get your A. So let's start with the first conversation we had online about why do we have government. So what I'm going to do for this review is I'm more or less going to tell you what to go study instead of telling you all the details that you already learned about it. So if I say a phrase or a term and you don't remember it, this is perfect for chance for you to get those notes open, go back into Canvas, look through our discussions, whatever you need to do to review so you feel confident. But I'm not trying to trick anyone or hide anything, so I'll do my best to go through everything you need to know to study. Since the book is extremely thorough, we can't cover 400 pages worth. That's why the lectures I do are basically designed to give us the stuff we really need to learn, and those are the things we'll focus on for the test. All right, so good news is I'm here to help. If you have questions after this, you feel free to email me. Basically, the format is going to be roughly 20 to 25 short answer. Short answer meaning you could list, you could write A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't have to use paragraph essay form at any point. But you will need to know at least up to four answers per question. So, just to give you a quick example, I'll ask a question like, name four powers of the US Congress, right? So, there's the first one. But I want to go chronologically. So about 20 to 25 short answer like that, and 20 to 25 multiple choice. So, somewhere between a total of 40 and 50 questions. And I think everyone's going to do great. Those of you who have been actively participating, not worried about you at all. Those of you who haven't as much, hopefully this will be a good chance to sort of wake up into the course and start running. So here we go. We asked the question the first week, why do we have government? And what I need you guys to study for that is if I remember, the key phrase at the very beginning was the state of nature. The state of nature. And what you're going to study is what is the state of nature, and then what is the social contract, and how does the social contract relate to the state of nature. So those are the first two key terms you need to know to start out with studying. It's kind of the basis for the whole class, those two things. So the state of nature and the social contract. Once you've got that down, we moved on to democracy and looking at what core elements need to be there in order for a country to be called a democracy. And there are more than four things, there are more than four answers for these short answers, but I'm trying to be merciful and not have you memorize every single thing. I realize that might not be possible, so you give me your top four and make sure that they're easily understandable. In other words, if you don't write it in a complete sentence, at least make sure that you're clear enough that I can know that you know it. So with that said, we looked into democracy and we said there were at least four key things. Democracies, and I'll just help out, give you a hint with one or two. I really want you all to do this active studying as you watch this, but just to help on the first view. Remember, we said with democracy you need free and fair elections, right? We said it's not just good enough to say, "Hey, you're free to vote," but then when people of color went to vote in the South, there were all of these horrible racist, what we call Jim Crow laws that basically precluded or disallowed people from voting, which wasn't free and fair at all. And so, and we've seen in the history of the United States, I've tried to do my best to teach you because it's extremely important. It's uncomfortable, but we have to understand how undemocratic the United States was, in the ways for how long it was. And one of those ways was by denying certain people, groups of people, the right to vote. Women, not until 1920, were guaranteed through the 19th Amendment the right to vote, right? So go through your notes with that. That's just one of many points, but four minimum points of what do you need for there to be a democracy? Free and fair elections, and then what else? So that's your key to go study those next items. Then we moved on to we talked about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So this is going to come up the whole semester, the Constitution. So what I'll do now is try to help you focus on which amendments do you need to know for this midterm exam. 100% sure you need to know the First Amendment. I will give you a hint. There are four freedoms or rights guaranteed in the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And again, the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution are called the Bill of Rights. There are more than 10 amendments, but the first 10 are called the Bill of Rights. So focusing on those for now, you need to know the First Amendment for sure. We've talked about the Fourth Amendment, which is, I'll give you a hint, no search or seizure by police or government without what? They need either one of two things in order to be able to stop you, search you, take your stuff. One of those two things, you should know both. One of them requires going to a judge, and that's as much hint as I'll give you for now. So the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, which is, I'll give you the easy part that most people know, among other things, the right to remain silent. So the right to not incriminate yourself. Government can't force you to speak on your own behalf. Although you could be called into trial to testify on something that you witnessed, as long as you're not the person on trial. If you're the person on trial, the Fifth Amendment protects you, and you can plead the Fifth and say nothing and let the lawyer do the talking. Of course, you can also choose not to have a lawyer if you want, although hopefully you'll never be in that situation, and if you were, it'd probably be wise to have one. Because as you all know, in criminal trials, you are guaranteed a lawyer by the Constitution. In civil trials, you are not. So, moving on, we had the Eighth Amendment we talked about briefly was no blank or blank punishment. What kind of punishments are not allowed by the Eighth Amendment? Then the 10th Amendment basically outlines federalism. If you want, you can go look up the exact language of the 10th Amendment, but you should remember from the chapter on federalism, which we'll go through in just a second, that the 10th Amendment basically lays out the way our government works and the reason that there are different rights and responsibilities for the federal government, for the state governments, all 50, and for local governments. So moving on to federalism, what you'll need to know is at least four basic elements of federalism. But to make it a little easier for you, what I'll do is say, let's approach it this way when we study. Be able to name four rights guaranteed in the Constitution that the federal government has, only the federal government. So I'll give you one just to help out. The right to declare war, or the right to war with other countries. States, we don't want states to have that right. We had a civil war. It wasn't a good thing. The result was good in terms of ending slavery, but obviously more people died in the Civil War than all other U.S. fought wars combined. So states aren't meant to be given the right to start wars. So federal government, be able to name four key constitutional rights or privileges that the federal government has, then be able to know 4 state rights. Okay, so states have different rights in the federal government, and the whole beauty of federalism, which is what this discussion, this part of our review is, the beauty of federalism is that those rights are split up between the federal, state, and local government. So, for our purposes, when the Constitution in the 10th Amendment says the states and the people, we're basically saying the states and local government. Okay, so we have 4 things that the federal government has the right to do constitutionally, 4 things that states get to do, and last but not least, 4 things that they both can do. So if you're writing it on the test, don't write, um, you know, uh, taxes as a state right, because that's only partially correct, because it's also a federal right. So it would go into the last category of shared rights. Does that make sense? So it's not necessarily a wrong answer to say that states can tax, but in this context, the correct answer would be that that's a shared power. You're going to get taxed at every level of government. I don't know if you remember my analogy, but if you go fill up gas today in your car, you're going to have a federal tax, you're going to have a state tax, and then you're going to have a local tax. Every drop of gasoline is going to be taxed by all levels of government. So that's a good type of thing to put in that last category of shared powers between federal and state. Okay, so 4 federal powers minimum, 4 state powers, and then 4 shared powers. That shows me that you understand federalism, and then we moved on from there to Congress. Congress, we studied a bunch of things, and what I want you to know, I'll try to help you outline it right now. First, you need to know how many U.S. senators there are. It's a pretty easy one, hopefully. How many senators there are. What happens if there's a tie in the Senate in the vote? So I'm kind of giving away the fact that it's not an odd number. It should be an even number. So what if that even number is split? Who breaks the tie in the Senate? So if you're like, man, I don't remember, just go back and look at your notes and the conversations, or watch the old videos that I've posted, and you'll see the answer to that one. So another thing, next question I'd like to ask would be, how many people are in the House of Representatives? The House of Representatives is an odd number of people, meaning not an even number, so there would basically not be a tie in the House of Representatives. So there's how many people in the House, how many people in the Senate, and then for each of those 2 bodies, how many years, when you win, do you get to serve for until you have to run for re-election? So in the Senate, it's a higher number than it is in the House. So hopefully, see, I'm trying my hardest not to give this away, because I want you to actively review. But some of these questions will probably be easy. Some of them will take a little bit of review for you to remember, but that's okay. That's what we're here for, right? So Congress, then, now we know that it's 2 different bodies inside one, right? So we've got the House and the Senate. That equals Congress. Now, the next part that you'll need to know is, what powers does Congress have? And I think one of the best class conversations we had was about this. Surprised a lot of people, and it usually does when you learn how many powers and what powers Congress has. It's arguable that they are more powerful than the president, but you could argue that from all 3 branches, right? So Congress, how many people are in the House, how many people are in the Senate, how long are their terms. I will give you a hint that they can run as many times as they want, as long as they keep winning, right? If you lose, you could come back and try to run again the next time. There's no limit to how many times you can run, but when you get in, there's a set number of years until you have to run for re-election. So that's those numbers you do need to know for each, for the House and the Senate. Moving on, the presidency. So presidency, the easy question I could ask you to start is, what are the requirements to be president? Not our opinion, but what does the Constitution say? Maybe we don't agree with it. Maybe we think it's totally bogus, but there are these rights, or excuse me, these sort of responsibilities set out that the government must make sure the person is how many years old, and they have to be born where, and then if they move away, how many years of consecutive residency do they need in order to be able to be eligible for president? Okay, so how old do you have to be? Where did you have to be born? And remember, we had an intricate conversation about this. And then regarding John McCain and Barack Obama and shattering the myth that I would call racial slander against Obama that said he was not born in the United States. That's incorrect. He was born in the United States. And John McCain, who ran against him that election, was born elsewhere. How is that allowed to happen? Go back through your notes and you'll see why John McCain was eligible to be president. And so there's that little caveat. In other words, if you're not born in the United States, where can you be born and still become president? So I hope that is easy for you all. So then we have to ask the questions of what does a president actually get to do? What powers does a president have constitutionally? You'll need to know, again, at least 4 things that the president can do through the Constitution, and 4 powers they have for constitutional powers. And many of those are in direct interaction with Congress. So then we move on to the Supreme Court. And we talked about just recently the Supreme Court. There's been a lot of stuff going on, hasn't there, regarding the Supreme Court. Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing away and a seat opening up on the Supreme Court. So here's some things you need to know to study for when it comes to the Supreme Court. The first thing you need to know is how many people are on the Supreme Court. So you have a set number of people. This number can change, and it may, but it hasn't changed since the 1800s. So how many people are on the Supreme Court? How many judges? We call them justices, right? How many justices? I would like you to be able to name at least 4 justices that are on the court right now. And I'll give you a hint. Right now, there are not 9 people on the court. There are 8 people on the court because of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing. So being able to name at least half of those, you can choose your top 4, your favorite. And then you need to know 4 constitutional rights, roles, responsibilities of the Supreme Court. In other words, president can do certain things, Congress can do certain things. What can the Supreme Court do? And we went through that pretty thoroughly, not only in the video lecture, but also in our conversation discussion on Canvas, which I've been really having so much fun grading and answering just great questions that everyone has. So keep up that great work. So for one other way you could say to study for the Supreme Court, you could say, what are 4 unique attributes of the Supreme Court? Just one quick one is, how does someone become a Supreme Court justice versus how would someone become, say, a senator or president? There's a really big difference between those two on how you get to that position. So if you look through your notes, most of you will probably know it right away. If not, perfect thing to go study, right? And then we talked about civil and criminal courts. The difference between civil and criminal, we said there's several different things, but just to give you one of the big ones to help you out, in criminal court, in a trial, it has to be a trial of your peers, it has to be a public trial, and it has to be a unanimous jury. So for someone to be convicted. So if it's not a unanimous jury and someone disagrees, go look at your notes and you'll see what do we have to do in order to make sure that this person is getting justice. We have to go back to trial, right? So without giving too much away to help you, but not too much, also look at, so be able to name four key differences between civil and criminal trials. Okay, so and other things to look at is, what type of issue would go to a civil court versus what type of issue would go to a criminal court. And that is usually pretty easy to identify, but you can always use the word intent and throw that in the framework, and that can honestly help you understand where you're going, if civil or criminal court, depending on the intent of what happened, and of course whatever the crime or grievance was. Good. So also be able to name to tell me what a class action lawsuit is, why a class action lawsuit is used, and when it can be more powerful and why than a lawsuit from one person to another or one entity against another. So with that said, on the criminal side, you need to know what a plea bargain is. Plea bargains are, as we've been discussing recently, overwhelmingly the way that people end up getting convicted is by pleading guilty. And you need to know, why would someone plead guilty? Let's hope that they only do it if they're actually guilty, right? We had a really good conversation in class about, hey, some people are going to be pressured and have been into pleading guilty for things they literally didn't do, because they're scared that the government has some kind of false evidence against them, and so they just plead guilty. So be able to understand plea bargain, go back through our conversations there, and just basically understand, why does the U.S. system rely on plea bargains so much? And on the civil side, why are settlements so popular? Why is it the vast majority, we're talking over 90% for plea bargains and for settlements, civil and criminal, they're resolved this way? Why is that? Why doesn't everyone just go to trial? It's a pretty easy answer, but it's worth looking up in your notes again, just in case you're foggy on that one. Other than that, we most recently just looked at public opinion polls. And with public opinion polls, my whole goal of teaching you about them was because, look, 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton was, by almost everyone's in political science's standard, was predicted to win the election. And she did win the popular vote, but she did not win the electoral college. So, and just I'll squeeze this in there. So first, know 4 methodologies used for accurate public opinion polls. Okay, so we just went through this, the most recent thing we covered actually, so that should be easy for you. I've been grading some great questions and answering some questions that you all had, so that should be easy to review, because you'll have it right there fresh from just this last lecture. And I think I went a little out of order, but I don't want to forget, for everyone to be able to explain the electoral college. So to help you study, I would say this: be able to tell me what the electoral college is, and I will actually help you with that right now. Just remember that it's the way we elect one person and one person only, or I guess you could say 2 people, right? The president and the vice president. It's not how we elect senators. It's not how we get people on the Supreme Court. The Electoral College is specifically and especially for presidential elections. So here's what you'll need to know. Now that you remember that part, what are 4 key elements of the Electoral College? How many people are represented? I guess you could say, if you want, how many total electoral votes exist? Where does the breakdown come from? So it's not just some random number, right? It's a number that comes from an accumulation of numbers. And again, I'm trying not to give this away because I really want you to go study it if you don't remember. But know the total number of electoral votes that exist, and then tell me, at least know for the test to be able to tell me, what's the magic number a person needs to become president? So out of blank number of total electoral votes, you need blank to win. So go fill in those blanks, and you'll be ready to go for the exam. Um, Also, just you could say, about the electoral college, just be understanding of what a swing state is or a purple state, and also just the general idea of why someone like Hillary Clinton or Al Gore could win the popular vote by almost 3 million votes in the last election, Hillary Clinton, but still lose the Electoral College. Be able to explain that. And if you go back through and look, especially at the questions that you all asked, and if you want to rewatch that lecture, you'll be able to get to that answer pretty easily. But it's a very unique process, so it wouldn't hurt to brush up on the Electoral College, especially because we have an election coming up really soon. So this could be something, I mean, it's potentially could happen again where somebody wins the popular vote and the person doesn't win the electoral vote. And you need to know how is that possible? Why does that happen? And just a hint, a quick short answer is the bottom line is the electoral vote is the only vote that really matters. So when you see polls, and you'll see them, I saw one just this morning, Joe Biden up 11 points in national polling. And if there was a way to throw that article in the garbage, I would have. Why? Because it doesn't tell us anything. You can have a huge lead in the overall, like Hillary Clinton did, almost 3 million votes in the overall popular vote, doesn't make you president. What makes you president is how many votes you need in the electoral college, and hopefully you'll be able to get that right there in your notes. Um, and just to give you a hint, it's one more than half of the electoral votes. So if there's blank to number of total votes, half of that number plus one is what you need to win. Okay, so that number is really the number that Trump and Biden and the third party candidates, Dr. Joe Jorgensen from the Libertarian Party, they're all gunning for that number. What is that number? And last but not least, about the Electoral College, 96% of states, or 48 out of 50, count their electoral votes in a certain way. It's not complicated. It's actually really simple, although it's kind of a cruel process if you're not in first place. So if you remember, I'll give you the exceptions. Maine and Nebraska do not count their votes this way, but every other state counts their electoral votes. Winner takes what? You should know the end of that, right? So just a brief review of our review. You're going to need to know, go back to why do we have government at all, which is the idea of the state of nature, the social contract and how it relates to the state of nature. Then we have the basic outline of the Bill of Rights, specifically to focus on the First Amendment, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Eighth, and the 10th. I will not ask you much more than that this exam on amendments because we haven't gotten to other ones yet. So although we did talk about the Third Amendment, remember being the amendment that says, troops can't quarter in your home, which is an old-fashioned way of saying, if there's a war or for whatever reason, a military person comes to your front door and says, let me in, you can do it voluntarily, but the Third Amendment protects you from having to let that person in, from making you, have that person come into your apartment, to your house, to wherever you live. Those amendments that we covered lightly, I'm not gonna be worried about for this exam. Although for the final exam, we'll go through some more amendments, and at that time and at that review, we'll worry about those. But for now, I think you've got a good handful of stuff to study, and I'm absolutely willing to answer any questions you have. If you want to respond to the video on the Canvas page in public so that other people who have the same questions can see the answer, that would probably be a really good idea. Don't feel embarrassed if you have a question, you just feel like I should remember this, but I don't. I mean, you can private message me on Canvas or email me, but I would encourage you to just ask the question in front of everyone, because I bet a lot of other people are going to say, I'm really glad they asked that. I was wondering that too. So, for your classmates' benefit as well. But of course, I'm here in any context you need me to help study. Um, you will have the test will be open. I'm going to try to keep it open. I said 24 hours, but I understand that there's going to be people who don't have internet access at their leisure. I have my kids right now entertained in the other room, entertaining themselves, but I get it. I'm not here to make it hard on you at all. In fact, I want it to be as easy as possible for you to succeed. So I'm probably going to make that window 48 to 72 hours. And then once you open the test, you'll have 3 to 4 hours to complete it. So whatever you do, just on your honor, I'd ask you all not to be reading from your notes from the test, not to be cruising the internet, not to be looking at the old videos, but to be able to try to be able to finish. When I give exams in class in person, um, even with the hour and a half classes that meet twice a week, people are able to finish in almost every instance within an hour or so. So if I give you up to 3 hours, and I know there are special circumstances, and if those apply to you, I will absolutely be, you know, following the DSPS guidelines. And of course, I'm here for you all in any context you need me to study. I want everyone to succeed. So please don't stress about it. I know that's easy to say, but if you've been watching the videos and doing the work and keeping up with it, it's not going to be hard to review for this exam. All the stuff I've said will probably ring a bell. If you haven't been doing that, this is a really good time to, step up and just go watch those lectures. Imagine it's, a rainy day and you're watching Netflix, but instead you're stuck with Professor V. I might not be as fun, but you'll be able to get all the answers to the review that we just went through. All of them and more are in there. I can think of maybe one or two more things. Civil asset forfeiture, we talked about in one of those most recent videos on civil courts. Be able to define what that is and how it can be abused, and what good context can it be used. In other words, why would anyone want it to ever happen? Because we saw a lot of negatives with what could happen. So if there's anything else that you're wondering, will Professor V be asking this? Please, if you're brave enough, post it just below the video for everyone to see, so we can all sort of learn as a class. But again, if you want to just message me directly, that's okay too. I'll probably just say someone asked this question and won't even use your name if you don't want me to. I just want everyone to be able to feel confident with the exam, to do their best, don't cheat, and I really feel like you all have got this. I know you can do it. This is probably the best time you could have ever chosen to take this particular class. Math will always be there, biology, all those other great topics that I'm not good at. But this is the season for politics, and I'm so glad you're taking this class. I hope that in studying you're inspired to talk with your friends about it. Get registered to vote if you're able to vote. If not, at least be informed on the issues, and tell your friends about things that you're learning in class, because this stuff affects all of us, and it's going to affect us for probably the rest of our lives. Government really touches just about every aspect of our lives, as we've learned just through half the semester. So I'm excited for you all. Yes, I'm actually excited because I think you'll do well in the test. I think you'll feel relieved at taking it and knowing that you've got this. So with that said, signing off for now, Professor V. Best of luck, buena suerte, and I will see you all soon. Let me know if you have any questions. All the best. Good luck studying. Suerte.